Hello. On the Poetry Channel today, I am going to read for you something that maybe occurs less often in poetry than one might expect it to. Poetry, of course, expresses the full gamut of human feelings. One of those feelings is anger, but that seems to turn up less often in its unadulterated form than one might expect. So I'm going to read you a number of things expressive of that. Three by Shakespeare from his plays, and one from Milton's Paradise Lost. So we're going to start with Shakespeare's Henry V. And in this bit that I'm now going to read, Henry has just been insultingly presented with a gift of tennis balls by the ambassador from the Dauphin of France. And this is how Henry replies to that. We are glad the Dauphin is so pleasant with us. His present and your pains we thank you for. When we have matched our rackets to these balls, we will in France, by God's grace, play a set shall strike his father's crown into the hazard. Tell him he hath made a match with such a wrangler that all the courts of France will be disturbed with chases. And we understand him well, how he comes o'er us with our wilder days, not measuring what use we made of them. We never valued this poor seat of England, and therefore, living hence, did give ourselves to barbarous licence, as 'tis ever common that men are merriest when they are from home. But tell the Dauphin, I will keep my state, be like a king, and show my sail of greatness when I do rouse me in my throne of France. For that I have laid by my majesty and plodded like a man for working days. But I will rise there with so full a glory that I will dazzle all the eyes of France, yea, strike the Dauphin blind to look upon us. And tell the pleasant prince, this mock of his hath turned his balls to gunstones, and his soul shall stand sore charged for the wasteful vengeance that shall fly with them. For many a thousand widows shall this his mock out of their dear husbands, mock mothers from their sons, mock castles down, and some are yet ungotten and unborn that shall have cause to curse the Dauphin's scorn. But this lies all within the will of God, to whom I do appeal, and in whose name tell you the Dauphin I am coming on to venge me as I may, and to put forth my rightful hand in a well-hallowed cause. So get you hence in peace, and tell the Dauphin his jest will savour but of shallow wit, when thousands weep more than did laugh at it. There we heard a king laying claim to his power and in a position of power, putting forth his anger. The next extract I'm going to read for you, by contrast, is a king who has given up his power, King Lear. He's been turned out by his ungrateful daughters, Goneril and Regan. And this is him venting his anger and his feelings at how he's been treated. No, you unnatural hags, I will have such revenges on you both that all the world shall. I will do such things. What they are yet, I know not, but they shall be the terrors of the earth. You think I'll weep? No, I'll not weep. I have full cause of weeping, but this heart shall break into 100,000 flaws, or I'll weep. Having heard from a king who has already claimed his power and another king who has given up his, we are now going to hear from a character who is coming into his power and whose true nature some around him have understood and others not. This is Mark Antony in Julius Caesar, whose danger is well understood by Cassius and not understood at all by Brutus. And this is Antony speaking to the corpse of Caesar after the conspirators have gone away. Oh, pardon me, thou bleeding piece of earth, that I am meek and gentle with these butchers. Thou art the ruins of the noblest man that ever lived in the tide of times. Woe to the hand that shed this costly blood! Over thy wounds now do I prophesy, which like dumb mouths do ope their ruby lips to beg the voice and utterance of my tongue. A curse shall light upon the limbs of men. Domestic fury and fierce civil strife shall cumber all the parts of Italy. Blood and destruction shall be so in use, and dreadful objects so familiar, that mothers shall but smile when they behold their infants quartered with the hands of war. All pity choked with custom of fell deeds, and Caesar's spirit, ranging for revenge with Ate by his side, come hot from hell, shall in these confines with a monarch's voice cry, havoc, and let slip the dogs of war, that this foul deed shall smell above the earth, with carrion men groaning for burial. And next, we move on to Milton and Book 2 of Paradise Lost. And what I'm going to read for you is the description of how Satan, deciding to leave hell and come and start his revenge upon heaven, on his way out of hell, runs into sin and death and the confrontation that he has. I'm going to set the scene a little bit before we get on to the bit which is directly expressive of anger and combat and so on. Meanwhile, the adversary of God and man, Satan, with thoughts inflamed of highest design, puts on swift wings, and toward the gates of hell explores his solitary flight. Sometimes he scours the right-hand coast, sometimes the left, now shaves with level wing the deep, then soars up to the fiery concave, touring high. And when far off at sea a fleet descried hangs in the clouds by equinoctial winds, close sailing from Bengala or the isles of Ternate and Tidor, whence merchants bring their spicy drugs, they on the trading flood, through the wide Ethiopian to the Cape, ply stemming nightly toward the pole. So seemed far off the flying fiend, at last appear hell bounds high reaching to the horrid roof. And thrice threefold the gates, three folds were brass, three iron, three of adamantine rock, impenetrable, impaled with circling fire, yet unconsumed. Before the gates there sat on either side a formidable shape. The one seemed woman to the waist and fair, but ended foul in many a scaly fold, voluminous and vast. A serpent armed with mortal sting about her middle round. A cry of hellhounds never ceasing barked, with wide Cerberian mouths full loud, and rung a hideous peal. Yet when they list, would creep if aught disturbed their noise into her womb and kennel there. Yet there still barked and howled within unseen. Far less abhorred than these vexed Scylla bathing in the sea that parts Calabria from the hoarse Trinacrian shore. Nor uglier follows the night hag when called in secret, riding through the air she comes, lured with the smell of infant blood, to dance with Lapland witches, while the labouring moon eclipses at their charms. The other shape, if shape it might be called, that shape had none, distinguishable in member, joint, or limb, or substance might be called, that shadow seemed, for each seemed either. Black it stood as night, fierce as 10 furies, terrible as hell, and shook a dreadful dart. What seemed his head, the likeness of a kingly crown had on. Satan was now at hand, and from his seat the monster moving onward came as fast with horrid strides. Hell trembled as he strode. The undaunted fiend, with what this might be admired, not feared. God and his Son except, created thing, valued he nor shunned, and with disdainful look thus first began. Whence and what art thou, execrable shape, that darest, though grim and terrible, advance thy miscreated front athwart my way to yonder gates? Through them I mean to pass, that be assured, without leave asked of thee. Retire or taste thy folly, and learn by proof hell born not to contend with spirits of heaven. To whom the goblin, full of wrath, replied, Art thou that traitor angel? Art thou he who first broke peace in heaven and faith till then unbroken, and in proud rebellious arms drew after him the third part of heaven's sons, conjured against the highest, for which both thou and they, outcast from God, are here condemned to waste eternal days in woe and pain? And reckon'st thou thyself with spirits of heaven, hell doomed, and breathes defiance here and scorn, where I reign king, and to enrage thee more, thy king and lord? Back to thy punishment, false fugitive, and to thy speed add wings, lest with a whip of scorpions I pursue thy lingering, or with one stroke of this dart strange horror seize thee, and pangs unfelt before. So spoke the grisly terror, and in shape so speaking and so threatening, grew tenfold more dreadful and deformed. On the other side, incensed with indignation, Satan stood unterrified and like a comet burned, that fires the length of Ophiuchus huge in the Arctic sky, and from his horrid hair shakes pestilence and war. Each at the head levelled his deadly aim, their fatal hands no second stroke intend, and such a frown each cast at t'other, as when two black clouds with heaven's artillery fraught come rattling on over the Caspian, then stand front to front, hovering a space, till winds the signal blow to join their dark encounter in mid-air. So frowned the mighty combatants, that hell grew darker at their frown. So matched they stood, for never but once more was either like to meet so great a foe. And now great deeds had been achieved, whereof all hell had rung, had not the snaky sorceress that sat fast by hell gate and kept the fatal key risen, and with hideous outcry rushed between. "O Father, what intends thy hand," she cried, "against thy only Son? What fury, O Son, possesses thee to bend that mortal dart against thy Father's head? And know'st for whom? For him who sits above and laughs the while at thee ordained his drudge, to execute whate'er his wrath, which he calls justice, bids. His wrath, which one day will destroy ye both.